The gunshot cracked through the Wyoming winter like God's own judgment. Big Sam Thompson stood in the doorway of his cabin, lamplight painting his shadow long across fresh snow. Before him, a child, no more than 7, trembled in a torn dress, her bare feet bleeding against the ice. Behind her, the darkness held worse things than cold. "Him beat my mama," the girl whispered, those blue eyes cutting straight through 17 years of buried pain. "She's dying. Please, mister." She said, "If there's trouble, find Samuel Thompson." Sam's hand tightened on the doorframe. He knew those eyes, knew them like he knew the scar on his own heart. The girl spoke a name he'd sworn never to hear again. Roseanne. Sometimes a man's past doesn't just knock on his door. Sometimes it bleeds on his porch and begs for mercy. And tonight, Big Sam would have to decide, does a man save the woman who destroyed him? Don't leave now. By the end of this, you'll understand what a real man does when faced with the impossible choice. Hit that like button, subscribe, and stay until the final word. This is a story about honor, and honor demands witnesses. There are winters in Wyoming that freeze more than water. They freeze time, memory, the part of a man's soul that should have healed but never did. Sam had been 20 years old when Roseanne Miller chose another man. 17 winters had passed since then. 17 years of silence, of work, of building Thompson Ranch from nothing into 200 acres of hard-won respectability. He'd buried one wife already. Consumption took her quick, left no time for regrets. He never loved her the way he'd loved Rose. Never could. Sarah knew it too. God rest her. She'd been kind enough not to mention it as she died. Now Sam lived alone, worked alone. The townspeople called him Big Sam. 6'4", shoulders like a barn door, hands that could bend horseshoes. But size meant nothing against memory. And memory had just arrived at his door, wrapped in a child's desperate voice. "She said you'd help," the girl. Emma repeated. Her lips were blue. Snow clung to her tangled hair. "Mama said, if ever there was a real trouble, Samuel Thompson is a man who does what's right." What's right? Sam almost laughed. Bitter. Cold. 17 years ago, Rose had stood in the church garden, moonlight in her golden hair, and told him she was marrying Elias Bennett, a merchant from Boston. Money. Security. Her mother was dying of consumption, needed medicine they couldn't afford. Elias could pay. "I love you," she'd whispered, crying against Sam's chest. "But love won't save my mother. I'm sorry. You deserve better than this." She'd left him standing there, 20 years old and hollow as a dead tree. Now here stood her daughter, shaking in his doorway, asking for salvation. Sam looked down at Emma. Really looked. The blue eyes were Rose's. The stubborn set of her jaw, that was Rose too. But the bruises on her thin arms, the fear that made her small hands shake, that was Elias Bennett. "Where is she?" Sam's voice came out rougher than he intended. "Miller's Creek, the old trapper's shack." Emma's teeth chattered. He said she wasn't worth the house no more. Said she could freeze for all he cared." Sam didn't ask questions. Didn't need to. A man who'd throw his wife out in a Wyoming winter wasn't worth the breath it'd take to curse him. He grabbed his coat, his rifle, saddled his horse while Emma waited by the fire, wrapped in a blanket 3 times her size. "I'll bring her back," he said simply. Emma looked up at him with those devastating blue eyes. "You promise?" And there it was, the hook that would sink deep and never let go. "I promise." The ride to Miller's Creek took 30 minutes through snow that fell like God's own curtain. Sam knew the trail by heart. He'd ridden it 1,000 times in his youth, back when Rose's family had a homestead nearby, back when the world was simpler, when love meant something more than a choice between two kinds of pain. The shack appeared through the white darkness like a wound, crooked, dying, smoke gone from the chimney. Sam dismounted, pushed open the door, and there she was, Rose Ann. The lamplight found her first. She lay on a pile of rags in the corner, one eye swollen shut, lips split and bleeding. Her dress, what was left of it, was torn at the shoulder. Dark bruises colored her collarbone. Her wrists showed rope burns. But it was her eyes that broke him. Those blue eyes, the ones he'd loved, then hated, then tried desperately to forget, lifted to his face. Recognition flashed, then shame. Samuel? Her voice was hoarse, broken. You shouldn't have come. He stood there. Every rational thought screamed at him to turn around. This woman had chosen another man, had lived 17 years without him. He owed her nothing. But Sam Thompson wasn't a man who lived by what he owed. He lived by what was right. And no woman, not even the one who'd shattered his heart, deserved to die like this. Who did this? His voice was low, dangerous. Rose's good eye filled with tears. The man I chose, instead of you. Sam crossed the space between them, knelt. Up close, he could see every year etched in her face, the lines around her mouth, the gray threading through that golden hair. She'd been beautiful once, still was, underneath the damage. 17 years ago, Sam said slowly, you had the right to choose. Rose flinched. Today, he continued, his hands already sliding beneath her, lifting with a gentleness that belied his size. I have the right to save you. Don't. Rose's voice cracked. Let me die here. I'm not worth... No woman deserves this. Sam's jaw tightened. He looked straight into her eyes. Not even one who broke my heart. He carried her out into the snow, wrapped her in his coat, set her on his horse with Emma, who'd followed on the second mount. Rose didn't speak, just pressed her face against his chest and wept, silent, shaking sobs that cut deeper than any words. Sam rode home through the storm, carrying the ghost of his past, and wondered what kind of hell he'd just invited into his life. The cabin felt smaller, with two souls in it besides his own. Sam laid Rose in his bed, the only bed, and ignored her weak protests. He built up the fire until heat rolled through the room in waves. Emma curled beside her mother like a kitten, exhausted and shaking. I'll sleep on the floor, Sam said to the room at large. Rose's voice came soft from the bed. You don't have to do this. I know. They'll talk. The town. They'll say, let them. Silence. Just the crackle of logs and the wind outside. Sam moved to the small kitchen area. Put water on to boil. Found clean cloth for bandages. His hands, rough from years of ranch work, moved with surprising care as he soaked the rags, wrung them out. When he returned to the bedside, Rose was watching him. That blue eye tracked his every movement. Why? She whispered. Sam didn't answer right away. He dabbed at the cut on her lip, cleaned the blood from her temple. Emma slept now, small breaths soft in the firelight. Because, Sam finally said, his voice barely above a murmur, this is what a man does. Even for someone who... Rose couldn't finish. Even then. He worked in silence. Rose winced but didn't cry out. When he reached her wrists, saw the rope burn circling them like brands, something dark and cold settled in his chest. How long? He asked. Years. But it got worse when he lost the money. Gambling. Drink. Rose's voice was hollow. I thought, if I was patient, if I was good enough. Wasn't about you being good enough. I chose him. I chose this. Sam's hand stilled. He looked at her. Really looked, saw the woman she'd become, the suffering she'd endured, the daughter she'd protected as long as she could. You chose to save your mother, he said quietly. That wasn't wrong. But I left you. Yeah, you did. The truth hung between them like smoke. I'm sorry, Rose whispered. I'm so goddamn sorry, Samuel. He finished wrapping her wrist, set the bandage aside. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of 17 winters. I spent years hating you, then years trying to forget you. Married a good woman who deserved better than a husband with half a heart. He paused. She died 5 years back. Consumption, same as your mother. Rose's breath caught. I don't know if I've forgiven you, Sam continued. Don't know if I ever will. But forgiveness isn't why I brought you here. He stood, towering in the lamplight. I brought you here because leaving you to die would have made me the kind of man I swore I'd never be. He moved to the fire, sat in his chair, the same chair he'd sat in every night for 5 years, alone. Get some rest, he said without turning around. You're safe now. Behind him, Rose wept again. Quieter this time, the kind of tears that come when a soul realizes it might survive after all. The fever came that night. Sam stayed awake, changing cool cloths on Rose's forehead, forcing water between her cracked lips. Emma woke once, terrified, and he let the child sit in his lap by the fire while her mother thrashed in fevered dreams. Is Mama gonna die? Emma whispered. No. How do you know? Sam looked down at the girl, saw Rose in every line of her face. Because I promised you, and I keep my promises. Emma studied him with those 2 old eyes. Then she laid her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. You're not like Pa, she said sleepily. No, I'm not. You're safe. Safe. When had he become that? The angry young man Rose had left behind wouldn't recognize this version of Samuel Thompson. Maybe that was good. By dawn, Rose's fever broke. She slept deep and dreamless. Emma curled beside her like a guardian angel. Sam watched them from his chair, coffee cooling in his hands. Outside, the sun rose over Thompson Ranch. A new day. A new problem. Because by noon, the whole town would know that Big Sam Thompson had brought home another man's wife. And in a place like Timber Ridge, Wyoming, that was as good as declaring war. Sunday morning arrived cold and bright. Sam stood in his cabin, watching Rose button Emma's only good dress, a faded blue thing with a torn hem that Rose had spent the night mending. The child looked up at him with those devastating blue eyes. Are we really going to church, Mr. Sam? Yes, ma'am. Rose's hands stilled on the buttons. Samuel, they'll stare. They'll talk. Maybe it's better if you hide. Sam's voice was gentle but firm. That what you want to teach Emma? That shame means hiding? Rose's throat worked. She looked at her daughter, then back at Sam. No, she said quietly. That's not what I want to teach her. Then we go. The Timber Ridge Community Church was a simple wooden structure that sat at the edge of town, like a judgment waiting to happen. When Sam's wagon pulled up, conversations died. Heads turned. Mrs. Prudence Calloway, 65, widowed, and the town's self-appointed moral compass, stood on the steps like a sentinel. Sam helped Rose down first, then Emma. He offered his arm to Rose. She hesitated only a moment before taking it. They walked through the parted crowd, like Moses through the Red Sea. Inside, the whispers started immediately. Sam led them to a pew near the back, sat between Rose and the aisle, as if his body alone could shield them from the stairs. Reverend Stone, a good man trapped by the conventions of his time, cleared his throat at the pulpit. His eyes lingered on their little group. troubled, uncertain. The service began. Hymns were sung. But halfway through his sermon on mercy and judgment, Mrs. Calloway stood. "Reverend," her voice cut through the church like a blade, "might I ask a question?" Stone hesitated. "Of course, Mrs. Calloway. The good book teaches us to help those in need, but it also teaches us about propriety, about the sanctity of marriage." Her eyes fixed on Rose. "Mrs. Bennet, you are still legally wed to Elias Bennet, are you not?" Rose's face went pale. Emma pressed closer to her mother. Sam started to rise, but Rose's hand on his arm stopped him. "I am," Rose said, voice shaking but clear. "But I am also alive, because Mr. Thompson showed me mercy when my husband showed me fists." Gasps rippled through the church. "That may be," Mrs. Calloway continued, lips pursed, "but living under his roof, unmarried, without chaperone. Some might say that's improper. Sinful, even." Sam stood then, slowly. His height seemed to fill the small church. "Mrs. Calloway," his voice was quiet, but carried to every corner. "If you saw a woman drowning in the creek, would you stop to ask if she was married before you pulled her out?" Silence. "Would you check if she had a chaperone before you gave her dry clothes?" He paused. "Or would you save her first and worry about propriety after?" Mrs. Calloway's mouth opened, closed. "The Bible I read," Sam continued, "says love thy neighbor as thyself. Doesn't say love thy neighbor unless people might gossip. Doesn't say let women die to preserve appearances." Reverend Stone shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Thompson, I don't think anyone is suggesting—" "With respect, Reverend, that's exactly what they're suggesting." Sam looked around the church. "Mrs. Bennet needed help. I gave it. If that makes me a sinner in your eyes, so be it. But I can live with that judgment a lot easier than I could live with her death on my conscience." He took Rose's hand, Emma's hand, led them toward the door. At the threshold, he turned back. "When Elias Bennet beat his wife and threw her out to die in the snow, not one of you did a damn thing. Don't talk to me about sin." They walked out into the bright morning. Behind them, the church sat in stunned silence. That afternoon, Sheriff Jefferson came calling. Sam was chopping wood when the lawman rode up. Jefferson was 50, weathered, a man who'd seen enough of life to know that right and wrong weren't always the same as legal and illegal. "Sam?" "Sheriff." Jefferson dismounted, studied the cabin. Through the window, Rose could be seen teaching Emma letters by the fire. "Town's talking," Jefferson said. "Town's always talking." "True enough." Jefferson pulled out his pipe, lit it. "But this time they're talking to me. About laws, about married women and the men who harbor them." Sam's axe bit into wood, split it clean. "She came here, beaten half to death. I gave her shelter. That against the law? No. But legally, she's still Elias's wife. And if he makes a formal complaint—" Jefferson trailed off. "Sam, I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's the law. You keep her here much longer. Elias could have grounds to press charges. Kidnapping. Adultery, even." "We haven't," Sam started. "I know. But what you've done and what people think you've done are two different things in a court." Jefferson puffed his pipe. "She needs to file for legal separation. Divorce, ideally. Until then, you're in a gray area that could turn real dark real fast." Sam was quiet for a long moment. "How long does a divorce take?" 6 months to a year. Maybe more, if Elias fights it." Jefferson met his eyes. "That's a long time to live in limbo, Sam. A long time for the town to sharpen their knives." "I can handle the town." "Can Rose?" The question hung in the cold air. Sam looked toward the cabin, saw Rose's silhouette in the window. She was laughing at something Emma said. Actually laughing. "She's stronger than people think," Sam said quietly. "Maybe so. But Elias—" Jefferson's face darkened. "Word is, he's been drinking heavy at the Red Horse, talking about what's his, about coming to reclaim it." He paused. "Watch yourself, Sam. A man with wounded pride and a bottle is more dangerous than a rattlesnake. Let him come." Jefferson sighed, put a hand on Sam's shoulder. "I hope it doesn't come to that. But if it does, try to keep it clean. I'd hate to have to arrest the only decent man in this whole mess." He rode away, leaving Sam standing in the woodpile, axe in hand, staring at the horizon. Somewhere out there, a storm was gathering, and this time it wouldn't be just snow. 3 days passed. Rose grew stronger. The swelling in her face went down, revealing the woman Sam remembered, older, worn, but still her. She moved around the cabin with quiet efficiency, mending his shirts, cooking meals that tasted like something more than survival. Emma bloomed. The child laughed, played, drew pictures in the frost on the windows. And Sam. Sam felt the ice around his heart begin to crack. It happened on the 4th night. Emma had fallen asleep early, exhausted from helping Sam feed the horses. Rose stood at the basin, washing dishes by lamplight. She'd borrowed one of Sam's old shirts, too big, hanging off one shoulder. Her hair was loose, falling in waves down her back. Sam entered from checking the barn, stomped snow from his boots, hung his coat. Their eyes met across the small cabin. "Thank you," Rose said softly, "for everything." "Don't need thanks." "I know, but you have it anyway." She turned back to the dishes. Sam moved toward the fire, intending to pass by. But as he drew level with her, Rose shifted, and suddenly they were close. Too close. He could smell her. Soap and something underneath, something that was just her. Rose looked up. Those blue eyes caught the lamplight. "Samuel," she breathed. And then, God help him, he was kissing her. His hands cupped her face. Gentle, careful of the healing bruises. Her lips parted beneath his, and she made a small sound, something between a gasp and a sob. 17 years dissolved. He was 20 again. She was 17. They were standing in the church garden, and the world was full of possibility. Rose's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened. Desperate, hungry, making up for lost time. Sam lifted her easily, set her on the edge of the table. She wrapped her legs around his hips. And Jesus Christ, she fit against him like she always had. Like no time had passed at all. His mouth moved to her neck. She arched, head falling back, exposing the long line of her throat. That borrowed shirt slipped further down her shoulder. He kissed the curve of her collarbone, felt her pulse racing beneath his lips. "Samuel," she whispered again. Her hands fumbled with the buttons of his shirt, got too open. Her palms pressed against his bare chest, feeling the hammer of his heart. He groaned, grabbed her hips, pulled her hard against him so she could feel exactly what she was doing to him. Rose gasped. Her blue eyes went dark. Hungry. "I never stopped," she confessed, breathless. 17 years. I never stopped loving you." The words should have felt like victory. Instead, they felt like a trap. Sam froze. His hands, one on her hip, one tangled in her hair, went still. "Rose." His voice was rough, pained. She heard it. The doubt, the fear. Her eyes filled with understanding and something that looked like grief. "You don't trust me," she whispered. "I don't trust this." He stepped back, putting air between them. Cold rushed in to fill the space. "You chose him once. When things got hard? What's to stop you from—" He couldn't finish. Rose slid off the table, adjusted the shirt. Her hands shook. "I was 17, she said quietly. My mother was dying. I made the best choice I could with what I had." She looked at him. "I've paid for it every day since. I'm not asking you to pay." "Yes, you are." Her voice was steel now. "You want me to prove I won't leave again. To prove I'm worthy of whatever this could be." She laughed bitter. "But Sam, I can't prove that. Not tonight. Not with a kiss. The only way I can prove it is time." He stared at her, chest heaving, wanting and terrified in equal measure. "And you don't have time to give me," Rose finished softly, "because Elias will come. And when he does—" A horse whinnied outside, sharp, alarmed. Sam's head snapped toward the door. His hand dropped instinctively to the revolver at his hip. Rose went pale. "He's here. Get Emma. Back room. Now." She didn't argue, scooped the sleeping child up and disappeared through the narrow door, pulling it shut behind her. Sam moved to the window, peered through the gap in the curtain. 4 riders, lanterns, swinging. The lead horse was Elias Bennett's bay. Sam recognized it even through the darkness. His jaw clenched. 17 years ago, Rose had made her choice. Tonight, it was Sam's turn. Sam stepped onto his porch, rifle loose in his hands. The winter air bit at his face. Elias sat astride his horse, swaying slightly. Drunk. His face was bloated, eyes bloodshot. The other men, Jake Morrison, Tom Prescott, and a stranger, looked uncertain, like they weren't quite sure how they'd ended up here. "Miller," Elias's voice slurred, "you got something belongs to me." Sam said nothing, just stood there, waiting. "Don't play dumb," Elias spat. "My wife, my daughter. Bring them out." "No." The word dropped like stone. Elias's face contorted. "She's mine. By law. By God, you can't just—" "She's a human being," Sam interrupted, voice level. "Not property. And I won't let you near her." "The hell you won't." Elias dismounted, stumbling in the snow. "You think you're some kind of hero? Stealing another man's family?" He lurched closer. "I know about you two. Knew it 17 years ago. Saw the way she looked at you at the wedding. Like she was attending her own goddamn funeral." Sam's finger tightened on the rifle. "So here's what you're gonna do," Elias continued, emboldened by drink and rage. "You're gonna bring Rose out. And we're gonna forget this happened. Otherwise—" "Otherwise what?" Sam's voice dropped to a growl. "You'll do what you did to her? Beat her? Tie her up and leave her to die?" Elias flinched. "That's right," Sam said. "I saw what you did. The rope burns. The bruises. A real man doesn't hurt women, Bennett. A real man protects them." "She's my wife," Elias roared. "I gave her everything. House, food, a name. And she—" His voice cracked. "She never loved me. Not once. Not in 17 goddamn years. Every time I touched her, she was thinking of you." The pain in his voice was real, raw. And Sam understood then. This wasn't just about possession. It was about a man who'd spent 17 years married to a ghost. "That's not her fault," Sam said quietly. "You can't force love, Elias. You can only earn it. And you didn't." "So you did?" "No." Sam lowered the rifle slightly. "But I'm not trying to. I'm just trying to keep her alive." For a moment, Elias wavered. Something human flickered in his eyes. Regret. Shame. Then Emma's voice cut through the night. "Don't hurt him." The child stood in the doorway, small and defiant. Rose appeared behind her, grabbing for her daughter. But Emma had already run, barefoot through the snow, and planted herself between Sam and Elias. "You stay away," Emma shouted at her father. "You're mean. You hurt Mama! I hate you! The words hit Elias like bullets. He staggered back, stared at his daughter. Emma, sweetheart, No! The child's voice broke. You're not my papa. Not anymore. Mr. Sam is nicer than you ever were. Elias crumpled, fell to his knees in the snow. A broken sound tore from his throat, something between a sob and a howl. My own daughter, he whispered. My own daughter hates me. Rose moved forward then, slowly. She picked Emma up but didn't retreat, just stood there, looking down at the man she'd married. I'm sorry, Elias, she said quietly. I'm sorry I couldn't love you the way you needed. I tried. God knows I tried, but I won't let you hurt us anymore. She turned to Sam. Their eyes met, and in that look, Sam saw everything. The past, the pain, the possibility. I choose him, Rose said simply. Not because I'm running away from you, but because I'm choosing myself, and Emma, and a life without fear. Elias didn't respond, just knelt there, broken. The other men shifted uncomfortably. Jake Morrison finally dismounted, helped Elias to his feet. Come on, Jake muttered. Let's go. They left, horses fading into the dark. Sam, Rose, and Emma stood in the snow, watching them go. Is it over? Emma whispered. Yeah, little one, Sam said. It's over. But he was looking at Rose when he said it, and she was looking back. Spring came to Wyoming like a promise kept. 6 months after that night in the snow, Rose Ann Bennett walked into the office of Attorney Marcus Webb with her head held high. Sam waited outside on the boardwalk, hat in his hands, watching through the window as she signed the papers that would make her free. Legal separation. Grounds. Abandonment and cruelty. Elias hadn't contested it. Word was he'd left Timber Ridge 2 months prior, headed back east. Broken. Hollowed out. Some men, when faced with what they'd become, chose to start over. Sam hoped Elias was one of them. Hoped, but didn't hold his breath. The door opened. Rose emerged, papers in hand. Her eyes were bright, not with tears, but with something that looked like sunlight, breaking through clouds. It's done, she said simply. Sam nodded. How do you feel? She thought about it. Really thought. Light. Like I've been carrying stones and finally got to put them down. They stood there on the boardwalk, Timber Ridge moving around them. Spring wind carried the scent of new grass and possibility. Rose, Sam started, then stopped. Words had never been his strength, but Rose understood anyway. She always had. Not yet, she said gently. I need time, Samuel. Time to figure out who I am when I'm not someone's wife. Not someone's victim. Just me. It wasn't what he wanted to hear, but it was honest. And Sam respected honesty more than comfort. Take all the time you need, he said. I'll be at the ranch. I know. She smiled. That's why I can take the time, because I know you'll be there. She stood on her toes, kissed his cheek, brief, soft, a promise of her own. Then she walked toward her new dress shop, modest, small, but hers, with Emma skipping beside her. Sam watched them go, then mounted his horse and rode back to Thompson Ranch. The wait would be long, but he'd waited 17 years already. A few more months wouldn't kill him. In town, people talked. Of course they did. But the talk changed when they saw Rose open a seamstress shop, saw her standing on her own, earning her own money, raising Emma right, and Sam. Sam was patient. He courted her the old-fashioned way. Sunday dinners, walks by the creek, conversations on her porch while Emma played nearby. He didn't rush, didn't demand, just was. 6 months after that night in the snow, on a Sunday evening with the sun painting everything gold, Rose took his hand. I'm ready, she said simply. For what? To choose you. Not because I'm scared, not because I owe you, but because I love you. Still. Again. Always. Sam looked at their joined hands, rough palm against soft palm, two people who'd survived separate hells and found each other on the other side. Then I guess, he said slowly, a smile tugging at his weathered face, I'd better ask proper. He dropped to one knee right there on her porch. Emma squealed with delight, and Roseanne Miller said, yes. Sometimes love means letting go. Sometimes it means holding on. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it means getting a second chance to do it right. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Subscribe for more tales from the American West. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? What would you have done in Sam's place?